Wow, everybody's joining us. That's good. Okay, he did put it in YouTube. Good. Thank you.
Good. Are you gonna make an introduction, Lalitha?
Yeah, that's it. You're on YouTube, so you will be seen by everybody.
All right. Live
Good
nation.
morning, everybody. I know some people will ask for transcript, so we may have to do that later. But good morning, everybody. I think you are in for a good presentation because everybody that is starting a business always have to go to the bank for some time, maybe not initially, maybe later on when you try to grow your business. So it's always a good idea to know how can you make your business bankable. And couple of housekeeping things. I would prefer if you can put your question and answers in Q&A. So if you guys want to chat among yourselves, you're welcome to do that. But Q&A would be easier for us to pick and answer quickly. And I will put my email address and Rob's email address, both of us, and also will give you the link to the recording so you can make a note of it and go and view it in future. So what I was going to tell you, many of you already know SCORE or have heard of SCORE. We are a national organization with almost more than 10,000 volunteers and 300 chapters. We in Houston have been there for close to 50 years, and we are one of the larger chapters with about 150. Everything about Texas and Houston, it's always big and great, right? So the same thing applies to SCORE Houston as well. We are big and we are great. We do a lot of things. We mentor a lot of clients. We provided close to 20,000 services last year. During the pandemic, all our mentors that have some experience in banking were so busy trying to help people with PPP, and now EIDL loans are coming due. So many are requesting how to pay for it. So our mentors are busy in that respect. Plus, the way things are now with inflation and doing business, recovering from the pandemic, starting up again. So all these things is taking a little bit more effort than what you would normally find yourself in. So what do you do? How do you market? So uh, we serve anybody anywhere as long as you are willing to work with us on Zoom, because somebody's asked if we can help people in Victoria. Sure, we can help you because at least you are in Texas. The state laws are a little bit more, we are know a little bit more about the state laws, but we can help other people in other states. But we request that if you have tax questions, then you may be better off asking a SCORE volunteer in that particular state. With that, I'm going to tell you, we do a lot of workshops. We do them free. We are not charging for anything because our goal is to educate you. Because education, understanding all these things. Many of us have products or services that we are good at. We can immediately think, oh, I can help someone with it. But starting a business is just not enough to have a product or service, because there are rules, there are tax questions, there are financial questions. So there are many things. And nowadays, HR, hiring and retaining employees, is another question that's very, very hard to answer. What do you do? How do you keep good employees? What can you do for that? So with that, I'm going to let Rob Gay start the workshop and answer your question. Rob has been with SCORE for more than 10 years, and he's always been willing to do presentations, share his knowledge. A lot of people may know stuff, but they don't want to share it, or they don't have the knack of dealing with people, how to communicate with people. Rob does those things very, very well. He was a banker. Even before a banker, he was an engineer. Forget that. So engineering, he turned into finance and banking. And he's been helping a lot of our clients to start business, how to go about starting a business. So today he's going to talk about how to make it bankable. So I'm going to let Rob handle things. Like I said, put your questions in Q&A, and thanks again to everybody. Rob, it's all yours.
Thanks, Lalitha. Really happy to be here today, guys, because I really love helping people start businesses. And a lot of times people need somebody to help out with some financing. Many people would like to go to the bank, but sometimes it's just not appropriate for where they are in their company right at that moment. And often what I find is that the templates and other information that people access on the internet that try to teach how to do a business plan don't do a very good job of teaching people what the bankers are looking for in a business plan. They're definitely looking for something much more streamlined, something very direct, something without fluff. And so that's when I work with people who are going to be trying to go get financing, I try and teach them exactly what needs to be there and in what order. And that's what I'm going to try and help you guys do today. All right. So the business plan, it says a lot about you and your company. Do I know my value proposition? Do I know my target market? Do I know my competition? Have I done marketing research? Am I willing to work hard to make this happen? That definitely shines through from the presentation in terms of how concise is it, and how focused is it? Can I communicate my vision? And do I have a handle on the numbers? Now, I really break down the types of business plans into three separate types. And maybe most of you didn't know that there's different types of business plans, but it's all about which audience are you trying to address, all right? And so a lot of times you'll see on the internet versions of a business plan that start with defining a problem and a solution. All right, and those are really geared towards equity investors, somebody where you're going to bring in a partner, you're going to sell them shares in your business, and they're going to have a percentage of the proceeds. All right, that type of conceptual presentation doesn't work very well for banks. And then another type is one where there's a lot of discussion about your mission or your goals or your SWOT, which means strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. And this type of document is really good for internal strategic planning. All right, this is a good way to do a plan and communicate to your employees where you want to go with the business and what keeps you up at night. But it's not a good format for banks at all. All right, it's a little too esoteric. They're very pragmatic, and so they want something that really is more like a detailed business description, I like to call it, where you just tell them in not too flowery language exactly what you intend to do and when you intend to do it. All right. So keep in mind that they're kind of a no BS type of group, and so you're not going to be using superlatives and saying how great you are. You're going to be talking about, I'm positioning myself in this way, and I think that gives me an edge because, okay? Okay, so a typical business plan for the bankers includes 6 sections. And really, it's only 5 sections because the first section is called the executive summary, and it's a summary of the best ideas and points that are made in the other 5 sections. All right. And this executive summary is the most important section because many bankers, that's all they'll read. All right. They are busy people. And the 2 things that they find most important in a business plan is the summary and then the 12-month cash flow. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit later about doing a month-to-month financial forecast for 12 months. All right. So, but you have to cover a lot of ground in a very short amount of time. I'll tell you that probably the best business plan that I've ever seen was about 6 pages long. All right. So it doesn't have to be long, but it's got to cover the essentials. All right. So you can see the first section is all about the product and the logistics and where you're located and what does the facilities look like. Then you move on to management and staffing, markets and marketing plans, competition, which is very, very important to the bankers, and then the economics. You'll see a lot of business plans out there that are just, they're templates for 40 or 50 page documents. That's not going to be appropriate for the lenders. If you need an index, then you've already written too much. All right. And I highly recommend you avoid any subcategories because I find that impairs your ability to put it into one of these 5 categories. All right. So don't make it more intimidating or more difficult than it is. Keep it simple and put it into one of these 5 categories. Okay, so don't use a template. Sit down and write this yourself in your own style. I'm giving you some outlines to follow, and you can follow those pretty almost regimented. But the templates that are out there are going to cause you to be extremely redundant, and it's going to have you write a lot of paragraphs that are of no interest to anybody. Okay. Secondly, tell it, don't sell it. All right. If you're using marketing language like, "Oh, I'm going to convince them," you're fighting a losing battle. Okay. So you want to tell them what you're going to do. You don't want to try and sell them that this is the best way or the most dramatic way. Okay. So you want to be very conversational in tone. You want to try and be elegantly concise. By that I mean, refine your thoughts, work this document, particularly the 2-page summary, and boil it down. All right. You don't need pages and pages of demographics. What you need is to have done a lot of marketing research, but be able to express that the most salient points in only a paragraph. All right. No grandiose, superlative, hyperbolic, or unsubstantiated statements. By unsubstantiated statements, don't say anything that you can't back up. Okay. If you say this is the fastest growing suburb in Houston, you better be prepared to cite a source. Okay. You'll also see in the templates, they always print out these beautiful graphs and charts and all kinds of things. And those are rarely of any value because they typically don't add new information. All right. And then another important point is to make sure that you synchronize the numerative and the narrative. What I mean by that is you're gonna go to the bank with a Excel file with all your financial statements and all of your cash flow forecasts and all your personal financial statement and any other models or other numeric related presentations. And then you're going to have the business plan, and you're going to cite those those models in the business plan. You're gonna draw out certain numbers and what have you. But what happens is people will change their financial model and they won't update their business plan. And that just creates confusion for everybody because the numbers don't match. All right, so just to drive home my point about why graphs are not typically helpful is these business plan templates typically just take your numbers, which generally show your sales or your net income or whatever going up over time from what we call the lower left to the upper right. All right. And you may think that looks really great, but to a banker, it just tells them that you used a template. All right. So let's leave that stuff out. Okay. So let's delve into the executive summary and talk about what specifically needs to be there. And like I said, you can follow this, to the T, because these are the things. If you cover these things, you'll have a successful executive summary. Okay. First of all, it's not a mystery novel. All right. So many people, they write the executive summary like it's a teaser. You know, if you so to speak, like, here's the problem. And if you read these 60 pages of my business plan, you will know how I cracked the code. All right. That's not what it's supposed to be. As I said, what it's supposed to be is it is supposed to cover the most important points that you want that banker to remember about your business. And you want the points to cover all of the categories that your audience is most interested in. Okay. So you may find this causes you to be a little dry, but it's as I said, it's much more important to tell it as opposed to selling it. Okay. So you're going to start out by telling them your legal name, the location of your business, the corporate structure that you've selected, the state of incorporation, and what the ownership percentages are of you and your partners. Okay. And then you're going to tell them a little bit very quickly about what your principal business activity is, the type of facility that you're working from, or if you're working online, you describe that. And then tell them how you make your money. Okay, talk a little bit about the business model. What are the revenue streams? How do you get paid? And right then, you want to stop for a minute, and you want to tell them how much money you need and what you're going to use that money for. All right, and so this is important because the banker wants to be thinking about, as he's going through the rest of the story, he wants to be thinking about, okay, what do they need from me, and can I accomplish that, and how can I structure that? All right, so they want to know how much money have you put in, first of all, because most loans require some sort of skin in the game, and then how much money gives them an idea if it's a fit for them, and third, what you're going to do with it. Okay, the purpose of the loan is very important because it drives a number of factors, including the type of SBA program that you might qualify for, the term of the loan, the interest rate, a lot of other requirements in the loan agreements that the banker is thinking about at that moment. Okay. And then the next thing they want to know is some information about you and your team. All right. How much management experience do you have? What kind of education do you have? What kind of jobs have you had in the past? In particular, they want to see some relevant experience in the business that you're asking about in this business plan. If you've been an aerospace engineer and suddenly you're wanting to make spaghetti and have an Italian restaurant, you need to explain, how you have the expertise to pull that off. All right. And then you get into the things that you see in other business plans, like the net addressable market. How big is your market area? What particular segments are you focusing on initially? How big can it be? What's the marketing budget that you plan to spend each month, and how are you going to spend it? And what's your customer acquisition cost? And then following on that, who's your competition? What's the number of competitors, their relative size, their pricing structures versus yours, key differentiations between you and them. And then a summary of your business cash flow model. All right. Don't just put the cash flow model here. Tell them a little bit about the assumptions you made and how you got to the numbers that you got. Okay, so give them some key assumptions, give them some key metrics. Talk about debt service coverage ratio. That's something that is your operating income divided by your monthly principal and interest payment. And that's crucial to lenders. And I can show you how to do that. Okay. What are your margins? Who are your customers? How many dollars per day and dollars per customer do you expect? All right, because these are all helpful metrics. And then the final paragraph, you need to talk a little bit about your personal resources. You're gonna put together a personal financial statement, which is gonna have everything on there, like your car, your house, your house, not only what's it worth, but how much do you owe? Same with your car, your IRA, your 401k, all of these things, your yacht, your weekend home, your airplane, all of those things need to be on your balance sheet. And you need to tell them what your net worth is and what your current credit score is. And then talk a little bit about do you have a working spouse? Do you have other sources of income? That sort of thing. So those are things that bankers are interested in, and they're always amazed that they receive a business plan and it doesn't even have a person's credit score. All right. They're gonna have to look it up if you don't provide it. So you might as well get out in front of it. I like to say that what you should do is try and write what will become the attachment to the loan application that's going to be sent on to the underwriters and the loan committee. All right. So think about it that way. Is I'm trying to write this as if to save the banker some work. All right. So when you talk about your markets, often I'll see in people's first try out a business plan, things where they'll identify very, very broad markets, or they'll say something like, this product will appeal to anybody. Okay. This thing will work for everybody. But, at the end of the day, you can't be all things to everybody. And so while there are products out there that might appeal to just about everybody, there's typically people that we can count on to be more interested in it. And those are the ones that we want to identify and we want to try and go after. All right. So you want to be very specific about that. So you don't want to say, if you have a product that is going to appeal more easily to, let's say, to people over 60, then you want to put together a marketing plan that goes after that group, as opposed to one that just says, oh, we're going to appeal to everybody and see who, who signs up. All right. So you want to be a lot more targeted in your approach. You can't, you don't have an unlimited marketing budget. So you want to kind of go for the low hanging fruit and establish yourself in that way first, and then, broaden out your market. You're not going to have an endless inventory or endless supply of goods either. So it's really important that you kind of figure out, okay, who is most likely to be my primary initial market. All right, and that's important if you need to do proof of concept, or if, let's say, you're a business where most of your customers are going to be in a geographic area close to your business, say 3 to 5 mile radius, right? So then you want to talk with a specific group of people in that area. All right. So for instance, if you have a pet store, maybe you want to try and identify all of the pet owners in a 5 mile radius of your business, because those are the ones that are going to be most likely to come through your doors. And so if there were a way for you to reach them, that would be helpful. All right. Don't provide endless amounts of data and demographics on, using the pet store example again. It doesn't really matter how many dogs and cat owners there are in the entire country. What really counts is how many are close by you, because those are the ones that you're going to be able to sell the 5-pound bags of feed to, right? So take those demographics and become very targeted about them. All right. What you want to do is present the conclusions of your research, not your research. And then focus on the net addressable market. That means what's the size of the market that that you can exploit, that's close enough, that's within your reach from a financial perspective, and are people that will be interested in your product. Any professional level marketing plan has to have 4 elements, all right? And those are, who do you want to talk to? How are you going to get in front of them? And what are you going to tell them? And then the 4th item is, what's your budget? All right. So think about it. No matter what you're selling, it could be anything from iPods to lawnmowers. It's who do I want to talk to? How can I get in front of them? What am I going to tell them? All right. So if I'm selling lawnmowers, I want to talk to anybody that has a lawn that needs mowing, right? How can I get in front of people who are going to be mowing the lawn? One way might be to send out mailers to everybody in a specific neighborhood that is suburban residential homes, and with some sort of offering, a coupon, or some other promotion, right? Or maybe it's something like a banner at the Little League park, or it could be some sort of social media, or it could be an event at the Home Depot every Saturday, where you're out there giving away hot dogs and barbecue. All right. But what's important then is, what are you going to tell them? Are you going to give them a brochure? Are you going to compare your lawnmower to somebody else's in some sort of slick presentation? Are you going to hype the fact that yours is quieter than anybody else's? So you have to think about these things and then focus on, what is your budget? We would all like to do a Super Bowl ad at $1 million for 30-second ad, but we don't have that kind of money. All right, and that's kind of a scattershot approach. That's not a real targeted approach to our market, right? we're getting in front of some of our primary customers, but we're also getting in front of a lot of other people. And so it's not very cost effective. And if we had to divide the number of customers that we get by the cost, we're going to have a high customer acquisition cost, right? All right. And so when we present this marketing plan, and I can't emphasize how important your marketing plan is, because a lot of people go to the bank and their marketing plan is very superficial, and they think that the bankers aren't going to be very focused on this, and it's something that's pretty fundamental. You can have a really good business idea, but if you don't have the people in place to sell, you're not going to do very well. And if you look at the case studies, like for instance, Mattress Mac is a great case study. He's somebody that is really representative of constant promotion. He's always coming up with a new idea. He's always got a new ad on. There's always some new gimmick, right? Like if you buy today, we'll deliver to your home today, or solid wood furniture, right? There was a big push to get away from the kind of furniture that doesn't do well in a flood, right? So he promoted solid wood furniture, and he continues to be innovative. You know, he had one where if the Astros win the World Series, then $3,000 of furniture free. Come by now, and we'll send you a check if the Astros win the World Series. Or, you know, if oil is above $50 a barrel by the end of September, then your couch is free. So it's always something new, and he's always out there, and he's always selling. And you need to be that way too. One of the great things about the modern world is that we have social media, and there's the complete digital revolution in advertising, and we're we're able to get in front of much more people with a much more targeted approach and for a lot less money. $75 a week on Facebook advertising can put you in front of literally thousands of people who are actually in your geographic area and have maybe showing an interest in your product based on keywords and searches. All right. Same thing goes for Google Ads and Google Words and other social media things. These things are a lot cheaper, and they can be very targeted, and they can be very effective. So what we have to do in terms of convincing the bankers that we have a very professional marketing plan is we have to be very specific. We can't just say we're going to use social media. You know, that's kind of silly. That's like, oh, wow, I wish I had thought of that, right? So you have to be a lot more specific and tell them and show them that you've really researched this. Talk about which particular type of digital media you're going to use, what that's going to cost you on a monthly basis, how many people that's going to put you in front of, how many people is that going to convert into soft leads, and how many do you expect that to turn into sales? All right. So all of that information is available to you. They can show you various metrics on what people tend to get when they do those types of searches, and you can teach yourself how to advertise on these platforms. But you can't just go to the banks and say, "Oh, you know, I'll figure it out later." Also, another element of a good marketing plan, and one of the reasons that the digital methods available today are superior, is the results are measurable and identifiable. All right, you know exactly how many customers you got, where they came from, what they responded to in terms of your presentation, what your conversion rates are, and what your customer acquisition costs are. As I've said several times already in the discussion, competition is really important. All right. You don't have to come up with a completely new business idea. There's, thousands of successful businesses that have been launched by people doing the same thing as other people do, but just doing it better. They identify a void in the market and they try and fill it. Okay, so like Starbucks didn't invent the coffee shop, but they transformed it and they have revolutionized the industry. And the bankers are going to be interested in the same things from you. All right. And so, what I recommend, you can write a lot of paragraphs about your competition and not really show any real conclusions. But if you'll do these two simple things, you'll really make the effort a lot simpler for you, and you'll produce a superior product for the lenders. So if you can, try and pinpoint on a map, and you can go to Google Maps or Apple Maps, and you can pinpoint all of your competitors on that map, and then position a pin for where you are going to be or where you already are. All right, and so that gives the lenders an idea of where the market area is and who's around you. And then what the table does is you set up one column is you, and the rest of the columns are other major competitors, and you contrast what you have to offer versus what they have to offer. And so in terms of pricing, in terms of the size of your building, in terms of the number of employees that you have, in terms of revenue streams, in terms of how you what marketing media you're using, whether you do online and they don't, any factor where you can identify something about you versus your competitors and contrast that for the lenders is highly helpful and will score big points for you. All right, now, as I said, besides the executive summary, the most important thing for you to do is build a financial model of your business. And once again, I don't recommend you use a template. I have a one-page example that I like to give people, and I have you work from that and build all of your financial statements from that one-pager. Because if you use a template, it's going to produce 12 pages of financial information, and you are not going to be able to explain any of it to the bankers when you get in front of them. All right, so what you do with a template is it asks you for various numbers, which you enter without giving a second thought. And then, like I say, it's going to spit out 12 pages. And when they turn to that page 11 and say, how did you get this number? And you say, I don't know, the model did that, then you're not going to get your loan. All right. So what I do is I work with you and I try and teach you how to build your a very unique model to your business from the ground up and produce the financial statements that you'll need. I recommend only one case. Some people will tell you to do a high case and a low case and an in-between case. And what I find is that leads to none of the cases being very good and not working very well, and a lot of confusion and really bad consistency in the numbers that appear in the business plan. So alternatively, what I suggest is you produce one case. It's called the base case. But you set up the model where various variables can be changed very readily by the bankers. And so they can run any number of sensitivities that they want to, and they can create whatever worst case scenario that they have ever dreamed of. And you can't anticipate what that would be for the number of different banks that you're going to have to go to in order to find a good match. We want to spend most of our time focusing on the first 12 months on a month-by-month basis. but then we are going to add year 2 and year 3 on an annual basis, but only after we complete that first 12 months. We're going to do a separate tab within the model just for the revenue forecast. All right, now I'll show you a little bit more about that on another slide, but it's very important that we not just say we're going to get $30,000 in revenues in month 1 and $60,000 in month 2. That's really not helpful to the banker if I can't understand how you got to that number of the 30,000 and the 60,000. So we have to break it down into a detailed elemental analysis that shows what did we sell, how much did we get paid for it, and what was the difference from month to month in each of those core activities. Additionally, we need to expect losses initially and size working capital appropriately. Not very many businesses are profitable right from day one. And so, typically you're going to have a period of something like 6 months and maybe longer where you're going to have to put more money in because you're not generating enough from sales to cover all of your expenses. That's okay. If you show the banker that you would be covering your expenses right from day one, then it's not going to be very believable to them. And secondly, it says you don't really need their help. Okay. So you typically have some ramp up period where you're not hitting full capacity and you're generating some monthly losses, and you want to have what we call a working capital pool to draw from in order to keep subsidizing your business until it makes what we call break even or begins to be profitable. When you're doing a financial model, think about it as really an implementation model. You're implementing your business, and so as the sales grow, also the need for other resources grow too. Your inventory needs to jump. Maybe you need to give more credit, so your receivables are going to grow. You may need more people. And so it's important that you begin to synchronize all of those activities and show them in the expense side of the model as well. And then I think it's real important that you stay focused on financing just the location that's your initial location. We all know that you're going to franchise this idea and make millions and millions of dollars, but you don't want to present that to the bankers right now. We want to stay focused and just get through this first one and be successful, and then we'll think about what to do next. When we start to do our financial forecast or cash flow model, it's real important that we separate in our minds what are the startup costs versus the monthly expenses. Startup costs are anything that we need just to open the doors of the business. Like if we leased space, we're going to need to build out that space, right? We're going to need to put in flooring and walls and ceilings and air conditioning ducts and furniture. We're going to need to make utility deposits. We're going to need licenses and permits, and we're going to need to pay contractors. And we have some legal and organization costs as well. Those are all things that we're going to try and borrow from the banks. And but then we're going to have monthly costs that are going to go on forever. Like things like salaries and rent, maintenance costs, our utility fees, our insurance, some local taxes, and our advertising costs. All right, so very important to separate those things in our minds because we're going to handle them different ways when we begin to do the financial models. Working capital, as I said, is the amount that we need to reach profitability. All right, so what you see on the graph is the cash position. We have this cash fund that's available when we first open our doors, and as we generate losses over the first few months, we draw down that cash until we reach profitability. All right, and so you see the working capital coming down, and then the blue line is the profits. Originally, we're below the line there, and that means we're generating losses. But at some point, we achieved break even. Now we're generating enough income to cover our expenses on a monthly basis. We no longer are relying on working capital. Now you can, there's a lot of ways that you might present a discussion about your employees, but what I find is the most efficient way to present this is to build a little table, show each person on your payroll, and show how much they make and what hours they're going to be there for each day of the week, and then you can take that analysis and turn that into a monthly salary budget. All right, and you can also compute your payroll taxes from that as well. So this is something that falls into the category that I told you about refinement. All right, so you have you could say it a lot of different ways. It could be very long, but this is a very quick way to do it, and it tells the bankers everything they need to know. Who are your people? How much do they cost? What's their education level? How many are there total? What do I think your turnover rate's going to be? So this is really nice. The bank's preferred cash flow format breaks things down into several categories. The first being revenues minus cost of goods sold. The second is those fixed expenses that we just talked about. And that allows us then to compute operating income, or what we call EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Then the next thing that they like deducted is principal and interest, or financing costs. All right, this is the order of priority that things are paid in their world, and so they can then take that information, the operating income, and divide it by principal and interest, and they come up with the debt service coverage ratio. And they're looking for that debt service coverage ratio to be at least 1.25 times minimum, all right, and hopefully better than that. That's typically done on they look at it on a monthly basis, but the hurdle level is analyzed on an annual basis. And then the last section you have in a cash flow model is what I refer to as the non-operating cash flows, or the discretionary cash flows. These are things that that don't have to be paid, including owner draws, or capital expenditures, or boost in accounts receivable or inventory, but you may want to in order to grow your business or contract your business in certain ways. All right, so these are areas where you've met your fixed expenses, and if you have money left over, you have decisions to make. Okay, am I going to dividend this money to shareholders, or am I going to reinvest in the business? I'm going to put back more into new equipment, or I'm going to put back more into new inventory. All right. So here's an example of the revenue forecast breakdown that I talked about. You build credibility by breaking it down into its parts. What you're trying to do is validate what you came up with. All right. So if your total monthly revenue is 30,000, what's that made up of? If you're a restaurant, that's a function of how many chairs do I have? How many tables? How many hours am I open? How many different meals during the day do I serve? How many people come through the doors? How many people buy alcohol? How many people buy dessert? All right. So you can break it down into all those categories and show what your assumptions are. And this shows the lenders that you're ready to borrow. All right. This shows that you understand how you get paid and that you've got your finger on the pulse of the business. You understand that to have a successful restaurant, I need 200 people to come through the doors each day. If I'm a daycare center, as is this case, how many preschoolers, how many after schoolers, how many infants am I counting on to be there? And this is just a very effective way to manage your business. And then you can do variance analysis and see, did you hit your targets? Okay, so those are the basics. But what I try and do is have teach my clients that being able to boil it down into a summary table and provide key insights through various metrics is what will really separate you from the average person that walks in. Just having a good cash flow model with that revenue model and basically validating all of your assumptions, having a debt service coverage ratio, that's going to put you at the head of the class. If you're able to also break it into a summary table and let the lender have the ability to quickly analyze what's in your model, then you're going to hit the home run. All right. I would expect these are the kind of people who are going to get multiple proposals from banks if you go to multiple banks, which is really what our goal is. All right. So here's an example from a pet store. Actually, it was a cat store. And they had several different revenue streams that they were anticipating. And they actually broke it down into a weekly presentation in the revenue forecast and then rolled it up to a monthly forecast. And if we said that we're going to have 583 total sales, for the month, that gives us a greater perspective than if we say, oh, we're going to have just the 15,500 in sales for that month. Okay, so we're going to have 583 total products sold, which is an average of 25 per day, and it's an average of $26 per person that comes into the store. So that's beginning to give some real insights as to what the customer is, what they're looking for, and what we expect from that customer. They were also going to provide grooming services. And the unique thing here is they related the average people per day in the initial projection to what their total capacity was. And so what we see is that they're projecting $2,500 in monthly revenue, but they're only counting on 2 people a day, and they have the capacity to actually do up to 10 groomings a day. So this is giving a lot of information to the banks about the conservatism of the model and the ramp up of the assumptions in terms of we're not expecting to fill the fill to capacity right from day one. And you can also see then the reason that the cost of goods sold there is we can begin to see what's the relative profitability of each of these revenue streams, which ones are the higher margins and therefore the most priority. They were also going to have boarding. So they were showing 135 monthly sales, but that only accounts for 4 per day, which seems very reasonable at $27 a day for boarding a cat. And that's, out of a capacity of 40. So they're expecting to have a utilization rate of only 10% when they first do business in the early months of their model. Okay. And what they did is, in this case, is they created a base month, which they could then adjust by having other utilization factors that adjusted things on a month-to-month basis. And that would then allow them to run sensitivities on best case, worst case, et cetera. And then also they provided wellness consultations where you could bring in your cat and they would help you design programs, holistic style programs for your cat. So it was pretty interesting, and they were only planning to have one of those per month in the early stages. So what else do you need when you go to the banks? Okay, so we've talked about our business plan, the 12-month cash flow forecast. You're also going to need to produce a pro forma balance sheet and income statement. That can be done directly from after you produce the 12-month cash flow model. It's real easy then to produce a balance sheet and an income statement. You're going to need a personal financial statement. As I said earlier, you're going to need your credit score. And if you've been in business, you're going to need the tax returns for any years, at least for the last 3 years that you've been in business. Here's an example of what a balance sheet looks like. It has current assets like cash and receivables and rent deposits, prepaid expenses. And then it has long-term assets, which are things like furniture and fixtures, leasehold build out, equipment, land and buildings, et cetera. And ultimately you'll have, we'll start with doing a balance sheet for what I call T0 or the time zero when you receive the loan. You show them what would be the assets and liabilities and the equity position of the business when you first start the business at the very start. And then you show what it would look like after 1 year and after 2 years. That time zero balance sheet comes from the startup costs. Remember, I said at a couple of slides back how important it is to divide your cost into the costs that you need to open your doors, which are called your startup costs, and separate those from the fixed expenses that you're going to incur every month. We can take that itemized list of startup costs and we can put them in different categories that generate a balance sheet. Here's an example of what your personal balance sheet might look like. You have cash, maybe some IRA, maybe the cash value of your life insurance. You have some stocks and bonds. You have your house. Maybe you have an investment in some other real estate, a second home, or maybe you have none of these things. It's not that important what items you have on your balance sheet. It's important that you provide a personal balance sheet. All right. So the banker is not going to make the loan on the basis of the balance sheet, but everybody has to present one, and they want to see what assets you have that would be protected by a bankruptcy versus assets that you have that would not be protected by a bankruptcy. And in any event, an SBA loan in particular doesn't require you to have any assets that would survive a bankruptcy, because the lender himself is not relying on your guarantee. Even though you'll provide a guarantee, they're not relying on that guarantee to make the loan. Their secondary source of repayment in an SBA loan is the government. Okay, so let me summarize. Streamline your plan, stick to the facts and avoid generalities. The devil is in the details. All right, you validate and you win over lenders by providing the details of in your business plan. Don't say, I worked for 3 oil service companies. Say, I worked for Baker Hughes from this state to this state. All right. If you're too general, it seems like you're avoiding, or you're trying to hide something. All right. And so the corollary to that is don't obfuscate or be evasive in any way. All right. You want to be very straightforward. Sometimes sometimes there's bad facts. All right. Like maybe you had a bad credit score at one time. Maybe you had a personal bankruptcy. Don't be evasive about those things. Get them out on the table. You never want to surprise lenders with the bad news at the end. Okay. And then, as I said, put 90% of your effort into the executive summary and the 12-month cash flow projection. That's where the rubber meets the road for the lenders. And we can help, okay? There's lots of mentors at SCORE who can help with a business plan. They can help with a 12-month cash flow forecast and many, many other elements of your business. So come and visit us. I've been a mentor for 12 years now. Lalitha is a mentor. And there's 150 of us here in Houston, and we're all volunteers. We don't get paid. All of our sessions are free to you and completely confidential. So come visit us.
Hey, Rob, let's start with question and answers.
Okay. You want to read, pick the questions?
Yeah.
Lalitha?
I'll read it. Is there a particular score that they are looking for, an average of 3 companies? What's the minimum credit score for a competitive application?
Generally, in order to go to the banks, you're going to need a credit score of about 650 or above. All right. Everything's a case-by-case basis, so don't take me literally, but occasionally there are options available down to about 600, but for the most part, a really bad credit score is going to eliminate you as a possible candidate for a bank loan. All right. Now we have lots of other options out there which may be available to you, and there's another workshop that I do on alternative funding sources for small businesses.
Yeah. But Rob, isn't the micro lenders, they may accept a lower score than 650?
They do, and that's where what I was thinking of when I was saying maybe down to 600 in some cases.
Yeah.
But it's problematic at that, even for them at that low, because those guys are collateral lenders, and so you're probably going to have to come up with some personal quote in addition to be showing that you've made some progress on improving your credit score.
We also have a couple credit counselors that in case you need some help to repair your credit, that they can be contacted. Okay. Mr. Gay, you mentioned you had a one-pager that we could use as a succinct way of to present our financial basis to lenders. May we have that or make it accessible in some way? I put Rob's email address. Maybe you can send him an email and he can send the information.
What I was basically referring to there is that slide where it walks you step by step through what's supposed to be in your executive summary. But I also have a one pager on what should be in the business plan, where it gives you a little bit more detail than what I gave you in one of those first slides. So I'd be happy to get that out to everybody along with the slides from today's presentation.
Yeah, I work in real estate. I have two questions. If I buy home and rent them out to people, what exactly would my cost of goods be? How would that be calculated? If I obtain my renters from Airbnb and I have a very low vacancy rate, do I still need a marketing plan? I can't imagine having and creating a platform that can meet or beat what the Airbnb is already doing. Can you advise?
Okay, so that's two different questions. The first one is you don't always have cost of goods sold in a financial statement. So typically cost of goods sold is the direct cost of providing your services. So if you're running an Airbnb, you could put all of your staffing costs for the room cleaning and that type of thing as a cost of goods sold, or you could elect to put it in just as a salary expense in your fixed cost. So there's two possible ways to do it. You want to check and see if there's an industry norm. If there's not, then you can do it the way that's convenient for you. So you may not have a cost of goods sold.
Yeah, but isn't it true that, Rob, isn't it true that when you have cost of goods, for example, you have you give commissions for people for selling your item, that would be based on what they sell, right? That would be based on the sales. So you could put that as cost of goods, right?
Right. Yeah. Anything that you can rate relate directly to a sale, you could put up in the cost of goods sold. But it just doesn't apply in some situations. So we could talk about that in a session more fully. On the question about marketing, you're right. If your business is to be on that platform, then I think what the lenders would be looking from you is some sort of summary of what that yields. Okay, so like similar properties, what's their utilization rates using that resource, and what's the some metrics about what the monthly rental rates are. Is it what some information about the seasonality, but don't try and fit everything into a box. Like I say, don't take me literally on every slide, because each business is completely unique.
Yeah. Do you include student loan debt on your personal balance sheet? I would sure a bank would like to know that.
Yeah, it's something you do, and you probably, if you're behind or haven't made payments that were required to be made, you'd want to be upfront about that because it may kick you out of certain types of loans.
Yeah. If you have X amount of cash, say 50,000, and no other source of income, can you still get a loan?
Yes, yes. But typically you're going to have some equity. Typically, you can borrow about 80%, just in real general terms. You can borrow about 80% of the total cost that you need to cover. So if you have 50,000 in personal cash, that that means you could borrow approximately 250,000, right?
But Rob, if they don't have any other source of income, but wouldn't the
Oh,
bankers kind of look at it a little bit? Because how are you going to meet your personal needs of funds without another source of income?
well, I've done lots of startups, all right, and you have to show the banker that that the business can generate not only enough money to cover your company's fixed expenses, but also your expenses, and that we often you're going to see a person that needs to quit their job in order to start this venture is going to have to show their personal salary coming out as an expense, and that you're going to have enough working capital then to cover that. And it's a judgment call by the lenders. It doesn't preclude you from being financed. All right, I've worked with lots of people where they were going to have to rely on the business for their salary, and but if you go to the banks and most of what you're borrowing for is to pay your salary, that's a red flag. Okay, so if the monthly salary that you would like to take out is a small subset of the money being borrowed, meaning that the money's primarily going to be used on creating business assets, maybe to buy equipment or to leasehold improvements and things like that. That's much easier to finance than if you're looking for just working capital, and most of the use of that working capital is for your salary.
Should we target loans via SBA directly? SBA doesn't loan money, so that's one question, but most probably Rob will answer. Or traditional lending institutions, could you name a few that support startup businesses?
Okay. Almost all banks make loans to small businesses. Almost all businesses would qualify for SBA loans. The SBA guarantee program allows banks to make riskier loans because, as I said, it gives them a second source of repayment that doesn't rely on personal collateral or the personal assets of the borrower. Also, the SBA programs also allow the lenders to lend for a longer term, typically 10 to 25 years, at lower interest rates and lower fees. So it's really helpful for getting small businesses started. There's no collateral requirement. You don't have to meet any kind of liquidation value on the loan, which makes it, which allows the banks to make loans that they otherwise wouldn't make. All right, and there's some list we can provide you with, some lists that you can access directly. One of those is you can go to the Hagel website. That's the Houston Association of Government Guaranteed Lenders. And those are the lenders who provide SBA loans. You can also go on the SBA.gov site and search for the Houston District Lender Activity Report, and that'll give you a breakdown of all of the lenders by loan type, average amounts, and number of loans that they've made in this fiscal year. I think the fiscal year runs from October to October or September to September, something like that. And you can look for banks that are in your area, look for banks that make loans that are the size that you're looking for or the type that you're looking for, and also find out who's the most active and which banks, don't participate in the SBA loan markets very often.
Yeah. One of the things I heard Tim Jeffcoat from SBA mention was they are trying to get people, they can even consolidate their different loans and borrow money under the 7A program. That's something that they may want to think about, And then are there such things as lines of credit? Could I get a line of credit to purchase real assets and pay it off over time, similar to HELOC?
They do lines of credit. It's a little harder to get those for a startup, but if you've been in business, then they can structure revolving lines of credit. They typically have something like a 2-year maturity. So you always have that refinancing risk out there, but it works a lot like a credit card, but you can get up to larger amounts. So you could draw, you could get a line that would be up to say $5 million, whereas you're not going to be able to do that with credit cards.
But Rob, when you have real assets, isn't it better to just get a loan because they will give you money on the asset?
Oh, yeah. Well, they're always going to help you try and match the type of loan to the purpose. And so, if it depends on a lot of different things. Lalitha, for instance, if you just need the funds for a short period as a bridge loan, that's one thing. But if they're long-term assets, then you would be crazy not to take the longest term available to you, right? So if it's something that could be financed for 30 years, then you'd probably want to finance it for 30 years, have a very low monthly payment, and then if your business was doing well, you could always pay it off earlier if you were capable. Yeah. But you wouldn't want to buy something with a line of credit that, remember, it's going to mature in 2 years. So you wouldn't want to buy something with a line of credit that you really needed 5 or 10 years to repay.
Could you expand on how you can borrow $250,000 from having $50,000 cash? You mentioned you can borrow up to 80%.
Yeah, right. So if you have I think what I meant to say there, I think, is that you could borrow, if you had a total capital budget of 250, then you could borrow 200,000 if you had 50,000 to put down. All right, so you're going to be able to borrow 80% of your capital costs. All right, so if it cost $1 million to start your business, then you would need 200,000 to borrow the 800,000. All right. And so just to clarify, I threw that number out pretty quick there. But if your total budget was 250, you could borrow 200 and put up 50 from yourself.
Do you suggest any type of digital platform for market research?
There's a lot of good resources out there. The SBDC has a lot of good information. The Houston libraries, Houston public libraries, all have business desks, and they have access not only to a lot of census data and other data sets, but they also have some private data sets that they've purchased to be used by people like yourself starting businesses. So, and they have full-time staff that'll help you, and they're experienced in doing marketing research and analysis. So, it's tremendous resources. You can also visit the Small Business Development Center. They have people who will assist in doing marketing plans. They're kind of like SCORE, except for their people are full-time paid employees. And so they work 5 days a week or more, and they can help you do some analysis as well. Lalitha, do you have any other?
Coming up.
Like to mention?
Where could we go for help to put business plans together? You can come to SCORE, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we have 150 people, and virtually all of them could help you with a business plan.
Yeah. And Sid, you've mentioned something about proof of concept. Can you elaborate more on that? And also, can you give recommendation for using Gale and facts now to find out information about competition differentiators? So what's the proof of concept that you have, Rob?
Okay, so proof of concept, it refers to something that's when you're developing a product in the early stages, you'll quite often be faced with making a lot of decisions about how to spend your limited capital resources. And so you're often encouraged to develop what's called the minimum viable project, the MVP, the minimum viable product, which means, you may not be able to afford to have all of the features that you'd like to have in your initial prototypes, and then what you want to do is you want to go to market and prove your concept. All right, and this is a proof of concept is a tough phase for banks to finance. All right, but sometimes they'll participate, but you typically want to demonstrate to primarily to investors that you can get traction in the markets. So, for instance, maybe you do a crowdfunding where people prepay for the product, and you take orders, and then you produce the product and deliver it later, just to show that there is demand for the product, that they like it, they're buying it, and this has the ability to become a commercial venture, a successful commercial venture.
Did you talk something about a base case?
Yeah, as I said, the base case is you want to produce a single case that you're going to present to the lenders, rather than multiple cases. All right, so you're going to do your 12-month cash flow, and you're only going to do one version of that, and we call that the base case because it's our expected case that tells the lenders that we don't know, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but this is based on everything that we know. This is what we expect to happen to the best of our to the best of our knowledge. All right. So this is the distillation of all we know into one presentation. As I said, you construct the model where it has the ability to create certain variables and adjust those variables so that you can run sensitivities. By that, I mean multiple cases that look at changing different parameters, and you can produce various worst cases. And so, the bank might ask you to actually change certain variables and produce a worst case form at some point. But I don't find it to be a productive use of your time to try and predict what those worst cases might be. And also, it also tends to make you look like you don't believe your numbers.
Do they look at personnel and business credit? You don't have a business credit if you're
if you're a startup, you're not going to have business credit.
Yeah.
You've been in business for a while, you may have developed a little bit of business, and under that circumstance, they would.
Okay. Somebody said, can I get the information on credit counselor? I will check it up and you can send me an email. Do you have anybody else? We used to use people from Bridgepath, but do you have any other credit counselor?
I don't have any names that I could suggest.
Okay. I said, sent to my email yours. 20% equity in restaurant business is generally not adequate due to higher risks of failure. Is that true?
Well, if you use the principle of other people's money, you always, when if you're comfortable financially with borrowing money, you typically want to put as little of your money into any project as possible. That allows you to minimize your risk and maximize the different businesses that you can get into. Okay. The amount of equity that's required for a business is a function of the cash flows of that business. If it's generating adequate cash flow to repay the debt at a 20% equity level, then the lenders will be satisfied with that. And if the 20% is the only equity that you have, then it allows you to move forward with the project. If you happen to have a lot more equity than that, you're certainly able to put it in. But a lot of times the lenders will say, don't put it in, hold it in reserve for if you run out of working capital. All right. If you, when you build the budget, you include working capital in your budget, and the lenders participate in that working capital on the same 80-20 level that they participate in the hard costs. But once that's established, if you don't hit your numbers and you need more working capital, you can't go to the lenders and say, give me more working capital. That's going to come out of your pocket. So they usually like to put you in a position where you stay a little bit liquid and have some money some extra money to put in if the working capital component that you agreed on with the lenders turns out to not be enough.
Yeah. My company is a startup and having contract with big technology company as a field service technician. How can I get fund to purchase commercial vehicle to operate?
Well, if you can show some consistency of earnings, I mean, if you have customers that you're currently servicing, or if you could get a contract to service somebody for 6 months and show that you have the cash flow to pay for a loan, then you could go to a bank. Probably in most cases, a better resource is the dealer. The dealer is going to have a lot more incentive, and they typically have really competitive loan terms for vehicles.
Yeah. If you purchased a business childcare and want to apply for an expansion loan for the baby room, would being in business for only 8 months hurt chances of getting the funds?
Well, longer is always better, but it wouldn't preclude you from doing that. If you put together a good presentation and show that you've got a good handle on your business, as I said, we do startups all the time that have never had a sale. So 8 months of history, it's not ideal. It's not every bank is going to want to do it, but there are banks out there that will do it, and we could help you put together a successful presentation and find them.
Yeah. How do you recommend one approaches a bank for financing, purchasing a mom and pop business with real estate, but that is profitable but has no formal records? How can they be in business, not have any record? They should have some tax returns, right?
Yeah, they have to have filed their tax returns. So I wouldn't consider purchasing a business that says they don't have any records.
That would be a problem. Somebody said about crowdfunding. We will be doing a webinar on crowdfunding, so you can join us. Cost repair. I'm gonna have to move. As it pertains to putting together a business plan, where can I go and discuss? Like I said, come to SBDC or to SCORE, and we will just go by and see how we can do that. Okay. Into base case. Yeah, you can work on your business. What's Rob's email? I did put it in rob.gay@scorevolunteer.org. And I think that comes to an end with all the questions that I have. If you have any questions, you can always send it to him. Okay. Is this workshop related to the liftoff business plan competition? Sorry, Cindy, we didn't put this in collaboration with the city of Houston. I'm sure they have their own schedule of workshops for the liftoff business, but SCORE mentors are there to mentor you for the liftoff competition. With that, I think I'm almost through. So everybody can contact me or Rob. Have a good day. Thanks, Rob. That was wonderful to say what we need to do business plan, because when you look at the business plan samples or models or anything in the library, it gets to be a little bit more confusing and overwhelming trying to do. Okay. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you again in another webinar. Have a good day. Bye. Bye, Rob. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.